Hey guys, and welcome back to the official Sourcing with Kian YouTube channel. So you're looking to source winning products from the best suppliers in China for your Amazon FBA business. Well, this is the video for you. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Kian Golzari and I've been living and working in China for the past 10 years. In that time I've manufactured over 2,500 products, visited more than 500 factories and attended more than 20 Canton fairs. That's led me to working with brands such as the NBA, Olympics, United Nations, Ministry of Defense, as well as helping Amazon private label sellers as well. Now the purpose of this channel is to teach you how to master the art of sourcing products from China. So if you're new to the channel, make sure you hit subscribe down below and tap the bell to turn on post notifications as well. And if you're feeling extra generous, feel free to smash the like button for me real quick. So today I've got a very special episode for you guys. Last year I was invited to speak at the European Seller Conference in Prague, Czech Republic by my good friend and event organizer Augustus.
Hello, my name is Augustus.
And this was a panel with 3 others and it was all about how to source products from China and other countries for your Amazon FBA business. And the good news is I've managed to secure a recording for you guys. Alongside me on the panel was the legendary Kevin King, Shane Oglow and Steve Simonson. Kevin King's been involved in e-commerce since 1995 and he's spoken at all the top Amazon FBA podcasts, events, and he also runs his own event called $1 Billion Seller Summit, which was in Austin, Texas, and I spoke at last year. Shout out to Austin, one of my favorite cities in the world, had an amazing time there. Kevin also runs the Freedom Ticket course, which is a popular Amazon FBA course, which is $1,000, but it's actually free with the Helium 10 monthly subscription tools. And I'll put a link for that down for you guys down below if interested, and I've also got a 50% off code for you guys. Steve Simonson has also got a great level of experience as a leader and an operator as part of many companies that he's taken from startup to high valuation exits. He has also, some of his companies have also featured on the Inc. 500 list, and we've also shared some of the same stages and podcasts before. And then last but certainly not least, Shane Oglow as well started selling on Amazon in 2013 and he managed to achieve 7 figures in sales within his first year, and he continued to grow and sell on Amazon as well as other online platforms, as well as help training through the Amazing Selling Machine program. Now the cool thing about this panel is that we all have different business backgrounds and we all source products, we all pick our products in different ways, but we all achieve our desired results. So it's just quite cool to have everyone else's perspective on this panel and just sort of listening and hear out what everyone's got to say and how they all go about their sourcing and selecting of products, and then just pick and choose which person best applies to you and your business model. Now, there were some great questions asked here on the panel, and what I've done is I've just put a timestamp in the description below, so feel free to watch the entire panel. It's a great conversation, but if you just want to see what questions were asked and jump to a particular question, feel free to click on the description below. You'll see the timestamps and just click on the question that you want to go to. Now, with all that being said, let's head over to Prague and enjoy this panel. I'll see you there.
Through the Amazing Selling program, and he works with theamazing.com. Now, Shane is also a co-owner of PR Reach, which is a video press release platform. Check it out. So let's give Shane a round of applause. We'll move to the...
Thank you very much.
Now, the next expert is Steven Simonson, and unlike everyone else here, he's the real businessman. Not the Amazon seller, but this is the entrepreneur. Am I right in saying that?
I've sold a few things on and off Amazon, yes.
Yeah, well, Steve was a finalist as an Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year. He has a number of companies that he's involved with, and actively, I was told today, 6 companies that he operates, so he is really good with setting up businesses and making them successful. For one of the companies for 3 consecutive years was receiving top awards in the Washington state, am I correct?
Inc. 500, yeah, it was US.
So this man knows business. We're going to the next speaker, Kevin King. Now, Kevin, I'll do a full introduction for you before the next speech, but Kevin King is the Amazon sales coach, a keynote speaker to many Amazon conferences and events, and he always shares some good tactics of how to sell well in Amazon. And here we have, finally, last but not the least, Kian Golzari from UK. So he's really an expert in product development and sourcing goods from China. Have you lived in China for 9 years?
I've been back and forth for 9 or 10 years, but I lived there full time for 2 years.
And this gentleman got a couple of nice contracts. Was it Olympic Games? So he was sourcing, designing, and delivering all the merchandise for the Olympic Games. And also, you worked with the Ministry of Defense, doing some of the contracts for them. So this gentleman has sourced more than 2,500 products. I'm not sure if all of them are from China, but you're definitely an expert for this topic. And the topic for this conversation is actually finding the winning products on China. Is it? So, because we are starting with this, let's start with the first part of the topic. If one of you wants to give us a little bit of introduction, how actually to select the product before going and sourcing it, what's the tactics for those who want to start to sell on Amazon but they haven't identified something that will sell? Who wants to go first?
Kevin does.
How much time do we have? No, so as far as selecting products, I mean, most people that are selling on Amazon do go to China. It's not the only place to source. There's a lot of good places besides China. The thing about China, though, is it's easy. The wheels are greased. It's super easy there. Everything's in place, so that's the reason most people go, and they're using Alibaba or the global sources or some other websites. There's a lot of other good ways to do it besides those that we'll go over when I speak a little bit later. I think on Saturday, actually. So the number one thing I look for when I'm deciding to sell a product for Amazon is keyword demand. You know, a lot of people actually will go out there and they'll use Jungle Scout or X-Ray or some of the other tools, and they will actually, you know, find something that's selling well, but you don't know why it's selling well. Just because it's selling well, it comes up as a lot of sales on Amazon, doesn't mean it's a product you should source, because maybe those sales are not coming from within Amazon. It could be someone that got featured on the Today Show or a TV show and they got a lot of sales. It could be someone that's driving a lot of traffic from social media or from their own website because they just don't want to fulfill it. And so it can be very, very misleading, and you can be taken down the wrong road, and a lot of people that happens to. So the first thing I do if I'm selling on Amazon is I look for keyword demand and opportunities within those keywords where I think I can compete. And so that dictates, number one, what I'm going to source right there, because in my opinion, if you have to drive traffic from off Amazon to drive your Amazon sales, you're making a mistake. The only time you should ever drive traffic off of Amazon is for launch purposes or positioning purposes. Otherwise, you might as well send it to your own Shopify site or something else. So that's the number one thing that I look for is keyword demand and opportunity. And then as far as the second biggest mistake people make when they're sourcing products is their budget. You got to decide. You know, the worst thing you can do on Amazon is run out of stock. So if I see this happen all the time, people will launch a product on Amazon, they'll find something on Alibaba or go to China, like on the China Magic trip that Kian and Athena do, and they run out of stock. And it's basically like starting over. If you run out of stock on Amazon, you might as well just start over. It's a killer, and that's why I say like 90 to 95% of the people that try selling on Amazon fail. It doesn't work. So you have to look at your budget. So the second thing is I look at is if you have, say, $10,000 that's the money that you have to go into this business, you should not be sourcing anything that costs you more than $4,000 landed cost. And landed cost means the cost to get it in China, the cost to actually pay to have it shipped over, whether that's air or sea, the duties, all the other costs to get it actually into an Amazon warehouse. You need 2.5 times minimum your initial landed cost as an investment. Otherwise, your chances of success are pretty low. So that's a common mistake people make is they say, I've got $10,000, they source a product for $8,000, and then they don't have enough money to do PPC or to do launches or to buy more inventory because they're successful. Maybe the product's successful and they're selling well, but by the time they get paid from Amazon, it's too late to actually get another order on its way, so you're out of stock for a month or two. It's a killer. And so those are two of the things that I look at that are critical to your success.
Thank you,
and then
Kevin.
these guys can talk
Anybody
more.
wants to add more how to source or how to find the right product before sourcing it?
Sure. I mean, Kevin covered a lot of ground there, so I'll keep my points brief. But I mean, I basically did a lot of my sourcing off of Amazon first. I wasn't sourcing it with Amazon in mind. I was sourcing it in terms of how can I make the best possible product that I can. So I can't stress the importance of like product usage. So if I'm sourcing a backpack, an outdoor backpack, I'm going up a hill and I'm climbing in a backpack. If I'm sourcing a sleeping bag, I'm sleeping in that sleeping bag. And I see like far too many people, a lot of mistakes, just sourcing products from China, not using it themselves, putting them online, and then they learn about the failures from their comments and their reviews. Like even if it's a coffee mug, fill it up with hot water, drink from it. You have to use your own products because you are your own toughest critic. And then you can really improve the products a lot in your own way. And then also asking your manufacturer for tips as well. Because remember, your manufacturer is not only producing for you, but they're producing for some of the top global brands. So, ask them what's working for your other customers, what's working in Germany, what's working in Brazil, what's working in the USA, what's the latest testing that you've done, what big box retailers, what supermarkets are you sourcing for? What sort of testing do they require? Can I get a copy of that certificate? You can get so much knowledge from your manufacturer, and a lot of people try and figure that out for themselves, but it's all available if you just ask.
I'm interested in what you do for women's makeup. It's
Well,
you just put it on your...
the line that we were testing outside.
So there's a lot of we could talk about, but there's two things I'd probably add in there is systems. So if you've got whatever your system is or a qualification, a product gauntlet you put things through, make sure you stick to that and don't deviate. That way you can train other people to do it in behind you. And second, keyword research is good, finding different products is good, but building a better mousetrap and sometimes creating your own demand can be something. I wouldn't do that every time, but it's something we do. And I know when we started off back in the day, it was said, don't do that. You go to where the traffic is and you kind of, just stick your head out the window and your face gets filled over there. And I get it. That's fantastic. But sometimes you want to develop your brand. So you're out there innovating, getting patents, getting IP protection, busting new molds, maybe looking at setting up your own factory. You're doing things like that. You wouldn't do that right off the start for your very first product. It wouldn't make sense because you want to get your feet wet. But I think that and even when Dan was talking earlier on the PPC stuff, he said, well, if you're just trying to sell a spatula, good luck, right? But if you've got a great product that Amazon is showing great relevancy for, it's going to make your life easier, everything you do.
Sorry.
Steven?
The only thing I would add is maybe a few things to not do, right? So the idea of going out and competing against the most competitive items, right? Finding the items with all these huge volumes on the Jungle Scouts of the world. You have to really come with a war chest if you're going to go play in that. So I would say, especially, it depends on the stage you're at, but try not to get caught up in trying to be the king of the hill on the most competitive products. You need to learn some skills. You need to get a process, the systems, just kind of understanding it. It's like an education. It's a degree at Oxford or Yale or Harvard or whatever, your first product you bring in. And then the next one is another degree and another degree. And pretty soon you're pretty good at it. If you run out and you try to, I heard that this product is selling or that product is selling, there are probably 30 or 40 types of products that I wouldn't look at just because they're so competitive. And so make sure that going in to set reasonable expectations and to find a product where you can differentiate and where you're not competing against the whole world, especially, the more competitive it is, the more likely you are to get black hat kind of tactics used against you. And that's not you don't want to start with that.
Do we have any questions from the audience to the panel? Atina, would you like to ask something?
Kian, why are you so handsome?
Questions related.
Good
Questions
question.
related to our panel speaker. Okay, do I see any hands?
Does anybody import anything from China?
Or considering important?
Wow. All right. A couple of people do some China imports.
Hi, guys. The question to all of you. I'm importing from China. I'm also working quite closely with my sourcing agent there. And things have been working pretty well. The only thing I've noticed with the list, or with the small experience I've got, is the prices in China are not as competitive as they used to be. And so how do you manage that, or do you see any new country rising above, that maybe we should be looking at, or does the infrastructure, which is what I've noticed, the infrastructure that China has developed over the last 10 years really makes up for the increase in price?
I think prices are always rising in China. That's a very good point. But as you said, the infrastructure is fantastic, and that can't really be replicated in any other country. So, like, in terms of like the scale that they can achieve for you, is brilliant. But one thing I would say is that stay in touch with your manufacturer and other manufacturers about what's happening in China in terms of labor costs, because what happens is factories know that they need to keep the price competitive. So as a result, they will then move their factories to other provinces which have lower labor costs. So for example, all the factories initially set up on the port cities on the coast because it's just easy to get the goods from the factory to the port and ship it out. But then as the port cities really started developing into big cities, they could no longer, it was too expensive to run factories, so they started to go more and more and more inland. So before, like 6-7 years ago, when I used to fly to China, I just get out at the airport, go to the factory, and that was it. Now it's get on a 4-hour high-speed rail into the middle of the country. So you have to basically keep up to date with your manufacturer and basically work with the ones who are also willing to adjust their price. But there's a lot of things that affect it, raw material costs, exchange rates, but exchange rates can actually work in your favor. So the RMB strengthened against the dollar. So for example, if you place an order to your factory a year ago for $50,000 and then they convert that into RMB, they're actually going to get more RMB than if they were to convert it today. So they're making more money off your order based on the exchange rate. So if you basically say, look, because my whole thing with working with a supplier is to work in partnership with them. What's good for you is what's good for me. Like, you're not my supplier and I'm not your customer. Like, we're working together here as a partnership. So if they're able to give you a price saving because they're making more money off the exchange rate, you're going to lower your costs, you're going to sell more goods, they're going to get more orders. So just basically open up that conversation with them, but the exchange rates is definitely a good one. And even there's a website called xe.com where you can like manage the exchange rates. And you can build a graph of the dollar against the RMB over 1 year, 2 year, 5 years, whatever. And you can say, look, over the last year, the RMB is strengthened, send them the image of the graph and be like, as a result, I need a 5% discount. And quite often you get it. But the best time to ask is right before shipment. Because your goods are done, you've already basically finished everything, and you're like, look, I'm about to pay you, but I really need your support here. I need a discount.
Yeah. The only thing I would add to that is, first of all, you got to figure out what's driving that cost, right? If they say it's labor, or they say it's raw materials, you can't change the cost of oil or the cost of aluminum or steel or whatever. There's certain raw material facts that exist. So some of that is just commodity, and it's global, and it doesn't matter if it's China or anywhere else, you're going to have that pressure. If they're saying it's labor, there's some truth to that, but the only way to keep any factory, any provider honest is to get multiple quotes. What is the market rate? That's the ultimate question. And you have to be careful not to push them too far, because they'll engineer the product to whatever price you want. And you can end up having a product. We had a product one time shipped, it's kind of a keyboard, and it had a hinge, and we're like, we got all these complaints from our initial trials. They were all breaking, and we're like, who put a plastic hinge on there? And they're like, well, you said you wanted that price, so we engineered the cost to meet your needs. We should have spec'd that hinge. We failed to do it. The metal hinge, we're like, well, we want the perfect, long-lasting hinge. How much is that going to be? They're like, it's going to cost you. We're like, how much? It's like 50 cents on an $18 cost item. But to the factory's mentality was, well, you wanted the lowest cost, I delivered it, I'm a hero. And we're like, no, you're killing us here. So understand that engineering a low price isn't always the equation. And sometimes they will engineer the price to your detriment. They think they're doing you a favor, but we all know that reviews and lifetime customer value and having happy people is way more important than kind of making the sale and saving $1, $2, 50 cents, whatever it is. So make sure you understand what's driving it, make sure it's competitive in the marketplace. And I always, on our POs, we index to the currency, because when it goes in our favor, we want the benefit, and if it works against us, it's fair to keep the factory in cash flow.
I might add, too, that there's a lot of smaller sellers here, and we all started from somewhere. We're all not, sourcing for Walmarts and Targets. My life changed dramatically with pricing when I got a full-time employee who knew what she was doing. And she's been with me for years and years now, and I don't know what I would do without her, because she's able to talk to people. She has contacts that I could never have. All of a sudden, my prices went down 30%. So, not everyone can go out and hire someone tomorrow. It's a relationship that developed over time, but I would highly encourage you to have someone on the ground that's not a commission salesman. They're not making money off every order. They're getting a salary, and they're out there looking for your best interest, and you get them trained up, and that's an invaluable asset. One other thing I do mention is I've been looking more and more at India over the last 4 or 5 years. I've had my challenges with that market because it's a totally different culture, and I get my Indian friends to call at people and argue with them because that's what they do. And you know they're a bit behind, maybe 10 years or so behind technology. So depending on what you're looking for, it may not really be that viable. But I like to talk to people about different countries.
Sorry, can I just add one point about India as well? I don't know how many of you guys are sourcing into the UK or within the Commonwealth countries, but we buy clothing from China, but then we also buy clothing from India and Pakistan because they're a very strong source for like cotton. But because the UK and India and Pakistan are within the Commonwealth countries, there's no GSP, so you don't pay any duty. So duty from China is 12%, from India it's 0%. So depending on what country you're sourcing into, just take a look at that and you can save a lot.
Could you hold for a second? No one can hear you.
I was trying to be loud, but sorry, I was just trying to follow up on that because I find it really interesting, and I think sometimes it's often forgotten in this type of events. But in terms of reducing your maturation period, financially speaking, when you ship from China, it takes you a month, sometimes a month and a half by the time it arrives to the port. So that's obviously money that you can either sit there or you have to negotiate 60 net, as we were speaking earlier, right? Now, with interestingly, my factories, when I've been visiting them, they have a board with the salaries. And I was quite shocked in my last trip because I was just calculating from RMB, and the average salary of the employees, labor cost in my factories is about 700 euros a month, which, in some parts of Eastern Europe is starting to be quite par, right? So I was just thinking, and I think I'm not big enough to consider it yet, but I'm just thinking the advantages that it would be to keep everything within the EU, and perhaps equally in the other side of the pond to perhaps find sourcing for some type of products within Mexico, which would be within the NAFTA, and it may have advantages in duty and imports, but also in time, which is important if you want to recycle your money and grow rapidly, as someone was asking earlier.
There's a lot to unpack in there. So I'll briefly say that, yes, if you can source closer to your sales destination, do that. Whether it's Mexico going to North America or somewhere in the EU, there's a lot of benefits. Cash flow-wise, it is a huge leverage point to go closer. And if it's even remotely competitive, I'm talking about within 10 or 15%, maybe even 20%, do it as close as you can to your intended sales channel. There's the local story. There's all kinds of good, positive stories that can come from it. But at the end of the day, China is still the world's factory. And as much as I've tried to source stuff from India, and we'll do it from time to time, many Chinese factories are putting plants down in Cambodia, Malaysia, Vietnam. So you'll see some expansion. But in this world of tariffs and duties and all sorts of things, try to be as close as you can to your customer on a realistic economic unit basis, if that makes sense.
We have a question here.
Similar question. What about local manufacturing? Poland, like European China, and 80% of my products are home in Lithuania. I'm manufacturing everything here in Eastern Europe. What do you think? And big advantages regarding this money and in business cash flow and so on.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, it's just a costing exercise because you have to basically decide what's going to be the cost of goods, including all your logistics and stuff like that, and your import duty compared to just getting it manufactured within your home country and then delivered down the street. It's easy to just basically weigh up those comparisons, but you have to have a very, very detailed costing file, so you get like a by the cent analysis.
So when you have some products with low manual job included, doesn't matter where you put your equipment in China or here. It only depends on raw materials. The costs are very similar. Like with my products like difference between China manufacturing and here is about 20%.
Yeah, the
No,
only
no
other,
question.
the thing I would say is if you can buy locally, more often than not, you'll get terms from those local suppliers. But the challenges I've had, we source still a bunch of stuff from, U.S. and Poland and Ukraine and all kinds of different places. But the challenge we get with like domestic U.S. manufacturers is they want to make 10 containers of one item, one color, and you go to China, it's like, hey, how many colors can I mix in a container? They're like, 5, 10, we don't care. And so they'll do those small batches, much more flexible. And so that kind of flexibility is what gave China the edge to begin with. So the more that you can find effective manufacturing in small batches and the flexibility to change it, especially made on demand, print on demand variations, laser engraving, whatever it is, those things I think have high local potential and have the potential to differentiate as well, if that makes sense.
Hi. Can I do a question about sourcing in India and in China? Because the product I'm looking into, I can source it in China and even in India. So I'm having so much pain talking to India. They're very slow responding after 24 hours or more. But they are the origin producers of the product. They're giving me slightly low prices. Are they? Do you have? How to explain? Sorry. Are they expecting you to lower the price as the Chinese? So, which are the difference dealing with the two cultures? The difference, because I can manage to have 5% less with Chinese. But I don't know how to deal with Indians because I didn't deal with them since.
I think the quick answer is firstly, you want to double check and compare the quality of your product. Which one do you prefer?
Yeah, I'm waiting
China?
for the product from both. Yeah.
So I'd say that's the most important thing. But then if you feel that one of them has a particular advantage, there are advantages and disadvantages of working with India compared to China. Personally, I don't like dealing with India because they like to do a lot of their business on the phone. And I think it's also very important to phone your manufacturers every now and then, but with the number of suppliers that we've got, it's just easy to monitor everything by email. But when I was working for Indian suppliers, they would phone me, honestly, every day. And sometimes they would have nothing to say. They would just phone,
oh, really?
Get you on the phone for ages.
Your time.
I was just like, Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that, but they were all like that. It's not like stereotyping,
okay.
all of them were like that.
Yeah, the good thing is that you can manage to produce less minimum order quantity. That's the big difference that I've experienced with India.
I mean, the good thing about China is anything is possible. They say the MOQ is 1,000 pieces, but if they really want your business, they'll do it for 200 pieces or whatever. You can even get your best terms from India, and they say, okay, I'll do a low minimum for you of 200 pieces. Then you can go to your Chinese manufacturer and say, hey, look, I've got a supplier in India who's willing to do 200 pieces. I want to work with you, so if you can match that, I'll give you the order, and just sort of play them off each other.
Okay.
Hey guys, please do me a massive favour, and if you're getting value from this panel, please smash that like button for me real quick, as it'll tell YouTube that you enjoy this content and it will show it to more people. Thanks very much, and let's get back to Prague.
Or India, I would come back with a spreadsheet and I'd say, look what's happening with your competitors. Look what's happening here. They just nope. So sometimes I would do things because they're only available there. Then I found logistics would sometimes be a little bit of a problem depending where they were located in Pakistan or India. Sometimes it'd be a problem. Maybe if someone was an expert on the ground there, they wouldn't have a problem with it, but I did. Whereas China's, they're slick. They know what they're doing in general a lot more. That was my experience. I'm sure there's some great Indian and Pakistani suppliers. And Steve made a good comment too. If you're interested more in that mass production versus handmade. I mean, if you go into Alibaba type in India, you'll see all kinds of handmade leather books and tools and crafts and things. So maybe that's a better place to go if you're looking for that more segmented niche market.
Thank you. We have a question from this gentleman.
Hi, it's a question to all of you. Which are your favorite supplier websites?
I'll start off. I don't like supplier websites. I much prefer face-to-face. I could count on my hand how many products I've sourced from online. I'm just very much face-to-face, Canton Fair. I would highly, highly suggest that for loads of reasons.
Sorry, so just to clarify the question, so in terms of finding a supplier? Yeah, okay.
Probably, if you're an Amazon seller, probably the best way to find a good supplier, because a lot of people are always worried about finding good suppliers. Are they going to rip me off? I'm going to take my 30% and run with the money. Is to actually reverse engineer your competition. In the United States, the information is public. All bill of ladings that come in the U.S. is public information. And so you can actually, there's 3 different databases, and I think Jungle Scout just added this last week, which is a smart move. They're buying the data on CD. But you can actually go onto Amazon, see who the seller is on Amazon, see what their company name is or their brand name. Sometimes you have to do a little bit of digging. The smart people mask it a little bit. And you can actually then use that information and actually go and see who's importing container loads of stuff on a regular basis. And you can reverse engineer who their suppliers are, who their trading companies are. Then instead of waiting a month for a sample from China and paying $80 to have it DHL to you, you can just order it straight off Amazon. And the samples you get out of China are going to be the nice ones that they've polished and dusted off. It's the best one that they can give you. By ordering a random one off of Amazon, you're going to see a true random sample and see how the quality is, and then see who's bringing in stuff on a regular basis and reach out to those suppliers. And that's a really good way to weed out the crap really fast. There's USA Import Data, Panjiva, or Import Genius, or 3 of them. They all cost money. There are ways on Panjiva to actually do some basic searching for free. You're not going to get the full information, but you can actually go to like panjiva.com/manufacturer-of, I think, and you can type in like baby blankets or whatever, and it'll show you some of the data. But you have to pay for it. But Jungle Scout, I think, I have not played with it. They just told me about it last week. But they just integrated it, I think, into their web app, where you can actually, they have the same data, and I think it's part of their subscription, which is a smart move. I have not looked at it, so I don't know how good it is, but that could be a valuable resource.
Yeah, I would definitely say, has anybody imported containers into America from China or EU? So if you haven't opted out of that list, by the way, then your competitors can also see what you're doing. So you can actually opt out of that list, and you can just Google, U.S. Customs declarations or whatever it is.
If you Google confidential treatment of manifest data, just go to Google, type in confidential treatment of manifest data, and it'll take you to a CDP website, the Border Protection in the U.S., and there's a form you fill out, an email you send. It takes about 2 to 3 weeks for it to, or maybe a month for it to go in a process, and then it will block that information for 2 years. It's free. It will not cover you for the past. So whatever you brought in the past is still fair game. But going forward, so like I recommend any new seller, that's the first thing they do before they even bring in a container is do that to block your competition, especially if you got a unique supplier or a good relationship so that people can't leech off you.
Yeah, there's 1688, there's Alibaba, there's all these sites, but I want to just echo, the idea of going in person to a trade show or to an event. By the way, there's shows all over the world, including your home country. That's a place to meet plenty of suppliers from all over the world. There's a big difference in personal relationships. When you achieve the transformation of I'm emailing, I'm Skyping, I'm whatever, into this is a person, I have a relationship, we're exchanging information and even money, that's when you can take it to the next level. And that's far beyond just kind of the normal Alibaba kind of thing. So start however you want, but then get into the personal when you can.
Yeah, in China, it's called Guangxi. And so they place a very big importance on personal relationships. So one of the best things you can do once you're up and selling is actually take a trip to China. Do it in combination with another trip, or just go on a specific trip to visit your suppliers. They'll often come out and pick you up in the nicest Mercedes that they can rent, and take you around, and you eat weird things like cow testicles and weird worms and whatever. Stuff you never heard of, but by doing that and by just sucking it up, sometimes you can get a 20 or 30% discount.
I just want to say the food there is amazing if you know what to eat, yeah.
But no, they can go a long way. I've known people that have done that and they walk away with net 90 terms or net 180 terms, or all of a sudden their price went down 30% just by going out and partying with their suppliers. And you just got to look the part, and just sometimes they'll understand, but if you can play along, it can go a long way in making you a lot of money.
Exactly.
Pretty much.
It's a good takeaway.
Yeah. One other thing I wanted to add as well is, like, you know, using these online websites is a good way to get started. You know, if you don't have the means to go out to China or you're not doing a particular scale. But also bear in mind that the best factories in the world are not online because they are the best, and for that reason, they don't feel the need to put their products online because their production lines are always full. So you'll only really come into contact with these factories. I mean, Alibaba and all these sort of sites work similar to Amazon in that if they want to be at the top of the listing, they're paying for that. So, you know, would you really want to work with a factory who's paying to be present online? If they were that good, they wouldn't need to pay for it. So that's just one thing to be mindful of.
How do you find good factories?
Well, Athena, sitting in the front row, runs a trip called China Magic, where we go to Canton, phase 2 and phase 3, and then we do a lot of work together, and then basically go and find factories for you guys, and basically, because the Canton Fair is huge, and I think when you go for the first time, it can be very overwhelming. You're like, oh shit, where do I get started? But I sort of cover content for a few nights on Athena's trip and sort of walk you through the whole process. So.
Another interesting thing too is when you start to, let's say you've got one manufacturer with them and you're making a product or two, it's going fairly well. You manage to get over China, fantastic. When you develop that relationship with them, like if I go to China, I don't even bother going to trade shows. Not that there's not good value there. I'm so busy traveling around, just going to factories, and I'll spend 2, 3, 4, 5 days going back and forth with one factory. And you sit there, you have a chat with them. They're bringing stuff out of the back they don't dare bring to trade shows because it'll be copied. It certainly won't be in Yiwu, places like that, commodity markets. And you're kind of at the front of the line of their innovation. And then what I do is sometimes you can make deals. So let's say you're sourcing a lamp and they got this wooden base and it's LED. Lovely. Maybe you can make a deal with them. Hey, you know, give me this pricing, or give me exclusivity. Maybe you have to pay for it. Maybe you don't. Depends on the size of your account. Or maybe you say, look, I like to modify this design a bit. So you talk to them about the cost of that. I'll pay for it. You let them take the patent in China. I'll patent it. Like, we're talking about a design patent now, not a utility patent. You can do things like that when you get that relationship, and you just sink yourself in, and you're solid. But those things just take a bit of time to develop. You can't just, you know, go over there and walk into a factory and expect to get the red carpet, right?
Let me just jump in, just on the final point here, I'm sorry. So the guy who runs AWS, he says there's no compression algorithm for experience, right? You can't hack your way to experience. You can only do it and just kind of get going. And I will just say that, like, when you go to a factory, assuming you find one that seems viable, the sample process is really cool if you do it right. You know, what Shane talked about, we've had products that we walked in and we're like, hey, we found this, we know that you guys make it, and they're like, yeah, but we're like, we want these changes or these iterations. And I'm not talking about making new presses or new moldings or things like that, but in a half an hour, new samples show up. We're like, no, not quite. How about that? After lunch, they got another new sample there for you. So that part you can compress. Right, and I'm telling you, we've done, sometimes you'll see something in their showroom you weren't even thinking about buying, and then you're like, you know, if you mashed up that idea with that idea, then we got something. And so that it really is far more, and the cost now is so inexpensive to go. For me, you know, get your feet under you, learn a little bit, but then take the plunge. You will never be the same after you come back from China.
Worms and testicles.
Yeah, I was waiting for Kevin to throw in something there. I'm sorry to cut you off there.
What about having a good sourcing agent? You cannot go to China every month or live here for half a year.
I have a full-time team there. They do most of the work at this stage, but I'm telling you, you should at least go once. You won't understand it until you go. And even then you realize what you don't know. And that's often our worst situation, is we don't know what we don't know. And so as much as I'm telling you, you should go, I have one friend, he buys 30 or 40 million a year from China, and he's only been once. He's got good resources that help. And so yes, it can be done. You know, it just takes time to develop that like anything else.
Yeah, I've never used a sourcing agent either, because just remember, like, your sourcing agent has that relationship with the factory, not you. And like, I've always liked building, all the best things that I've got out of my factories have always been based on the relationship. And your sourcing agent holds all of that for you. But I know that in this Amazon business, there's so many things that you have to focus your energy on. And if sourcing is not one of the things that you want to focus on, then yeah, give it to a sourcing agent. But if it's one of the things that excites you, I think another thing is that, a lot of these Amazon sellers think about, making profit on their selling price, but, you can make profit on your buying price. If you can source properly and you can source something cheaper, you can make a hell of a lot more money that way.
So the sourcing agent can do such job like lowering your costs about 30%. 30 to 50. Instead of me having price five euro per unit, he can get the price three and a half euro, including his commission. It's
Yeah, I mean, that's very good. I would just make sure that you're happy with what you're getting, because, when it's usually too good to be true, it usually is, So just be mindful of that what you're getting is okay.
Yeah, the other thing I'd say is the first €5 price wasn't the real market price, right? We've all experienced, myself included, where I've bought containers and containers of something and then found a better way or better, process, or maybe a factor farther inland, and had significant advantages. So there's always those stories, but by and large, there's a market price on something. There's not one factory that has so much advantage. Ironically, I've found, and I'd love to hear you guys' input, but the smaller the factory, sometimes they'll go with a lower margin. The bigger the factory, more professional the factory even, they need a higher margin. And so it sounds counterintuitive to go the biggest guys may have a higher price, but that is my experience.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is that, it excites these Chinese suppliers to have foreign customers. They like dealing with people from, France, Italy, Spain, USA, whatever. They like these relationships. And I was on the phone to one of my suppliers yesterday, and I just phoned him up because he's a friend, not because I needed to ask him any business stuff. I just checked to see how he's doing. And he told me that he was expecting his first child. And then yesterday on the phone, he told me the Chinese name, but I said, what about an English name? And he said, I want you to name my child. And I'm like, do you really think that guy is going to screw you on the price? If a guy's asking you to name his child, he's going to give you the best price available. So I think those relationships are so, so important.
We have another question from this gentleman.
I don't know if it's a boy or a girl yet, so I've not picked. Yeah, Augustus. That's good.
So when you're in the process of launching a new product on a new niche, on top of the keyword demand or the ROI or the ROII, what is your personal checklist to decide which idea or the other one?
For me, it's how competitive it is, how competitive those keywords are, and I never go after the top keywords. I always go towards the bottom or middle, and then work my way up. Because that way, if you do have a product that comes in and you have some issues with it and you get some bad reviews, you haven't done a lot of giveaways or spent a lot of money to launch something that's highly competitive, you can either kill the listing and start all over with a new ASIN and have a fresh start once you fix the problems. So that's one of the things that I do. And the other thing is that nobody's talked about here is I never let anything leave China without an inspection. I don't know how many people order something from China and they don't pay the inspection fees. And sometimes a good and I'm not talking about the $99 cheap shit on Alibaba. You need to spend $200 to $300, $400, pay for a real inspection company. That's not someone from the factory, not someone that, oh yeah, we got our guy, we'll check it for you, don't worry. People cut corners on this all the time, and you can't, I have factories that I've ordered from 26 times, and I've never had a problem. And so you're like, well, I don't need to do an inspection anymore. Absolutely not. You have to do an inspection because, especially after Chinese New Year, these factories, the turnover in the factories, people go back out west, and a lot of them never come back. So it's all these new employees, and there's problems. And I've had issues where things don't pass the inspection. And the inspection reports that you get, if you've never done one, they can be 30 to 50 pages long. I mean, they will take it and, like, if they're putting your logo on the product, they'll take a piece of masking tape and put it on there and peel it off and see if the logo peels off with the tape. If it's a cooking product, they'll cook with it. I had a waffle maker, and they cooked waffles on it. I make my factories drop in the inspection company. They have to insist on a 1 meter drop. So I actually take the cartons and drop it to the ground and then open it up and see if anything broke. The factories hate that. They detest it. But I won't let an inspection pass unless they do that, because that way I know when they play football with it in the containers, throwing them in there, everything's going to be okay. I'm not going to have problems. So always, always, always do an inspection. Never cut corners on that. It can save you a lot of time and headache and problems, bad reviews, and can be a major factor in your success.
Yeah, one other quick word. So there's lots of different kinds of inspection. That's kind of a pre-shipment inspection. Everybody should do it. Everybody should do it. And there's some of you in your mind right now, you're like, I've been doing this a couple years, I haven't had a problem, it'll be fine. Believe me, do it. I've been doing it many, many years, and when the problems come up, they're big problems. So very good advice. If it's big enough quantity, big enough orders, sometimes you'll do in-process inspections. You may do raw materials inspections. There are many laws, like CARB 2 and all kinds of FDA things. Sometimes you need to have those inspections too, depending on your volume. So think about that from a supply chain. The number one thing we look at is unit economics. We break down exactly what it's going to cost, what we forecast the sale price, and the volume and the expected move amounts. And if we don't think that unit can hit a certain threshold, of net contribution, we won't do it. And sometimes we get so emotional when we're in this process, right? We have this idea, we think it's really good, and then we just keep selling ourselves the same idea. And everything we do, we're kind of like, it's not quite perfect, but it's still going to be great. Don't be emotional about it. Treat it like a profit machine, and it either produces or it doesn't. And if it doesn't, fire it immediately, right? No emotion. Treat it like a unit economic. And the other mistake I see people, they don't understand their landed cost. Really understanding your landed cost with every layer of shipping and duties and all the accessorial charges that go with it, that's a big mistake that people make, so please don't make that mistake. And one final tip, there are ways to get terms in China. We don't have time to go into that, but I love the book, and it's like 15 years of my life, not based on me, but true stories from this author. It's called Poorly Made in China. It's a wonderful book, and it tells you some examples of things that have happened to all kinds of people, myself included. So I really identify with the book. Paul Midler wrote it, Poorly Made in China, great book, and it helps you be prepared so that you can just trust but verify. Factories in China are amazing, world-class people, but it's trust but verify always.
Thank you. We'll just take last question over there.
You guys have mentioned that you do inspections in China before the freight ships. Are you also inspecting whether the goods are packed and labeled to Amazon standards so that when they're delivered to the FBA, you don't need Amazon prep services?
Yeah, you do that. I mean, you can actually send the inspection company, you can tell them exactly what you want. You can send them a prototype sample, say make sure it looks like this, make sure they're packed this way, the label is 2 centimeters from the top and 3 centimeters from the right, or whatever, and they'll do all that stuff for you. They spend, typically, on a small order, they'll spend a day there. And you also want to make sure that it's always a random sample. So if you order 1,000 units, typically they're going to check about 125 of those, and you want to make sure everything is packed and ready to go. It's on the dock, like they're going to take it to the port. And they come in and they randomly pick stuff and then make them correct anything that you find wrong. And I've actually had cases where it failed the inspection multiple times. And the factory was like, well, it was a small scratch on the bottom of this waffle maker. Like it's a black material and there's a small scratch on the bottom. I'm like, who cares? The thing works. That's what they were telling me. The thing works, nobody cares. And we sell this to Africa all the time. Nobody ever complains. We sell this over here. It's like, well, in the US, they're gonna think that's used. And I'm gonna get a lot of bad complaints for it. You have to fix that. And they refused. I said, well, you can keep my 30%. Well, I didn't say that. They said, we're going to keep you're not getting a refund. I said, keep it. I don't care. I'm not paying you. It's not worth paying you the other 70% to put a product out that's just going to lose me money. So I was willing to walk from it. Eventually, they came around, and they made all kinds of things. Well, we'll just sell it to somebody else. I said, good luck with that. It's got my logo and everything on it. Good luck. You can sell it in the flea markets or whatever, but I'm not paying you. Eventually, they came around, and they fixed the problem. At their expense. And they always have to pay if an inspection, it's in my purchase order up front, that I tell them up front that this is going to be inspected by a third-party company. If it fails, you're paying for the re-inspection. You're fixing every problem, you're going to open every box, fix every single issue, go through everything, and it's in the terms up front. And they have to pay for the re-inspection until it passes. That's just the terms that I make them agree to.
A couple other things to add to that is I didn't do this at first, but the last couple of years I always have a very clear agreement with them. Now, is it necessarily enforceable? I don't know. I've never had to go that route, but it's nice to have an agreement up front with a factory for all kinds of things. But the other thing I was thinking is so you're getting an inspection company, lovely, it costs you $200-300 each time, whatever it is. As your scale goes up and you start getting more and more containers, maybe you're shipping a container a month, I don't know. If you're getting an employee, like I was lucky enough to have way back when I started, that's a dual purpose thing. So not only is she out there looking for stuff, and she's like a pit bull. I feel sorry for these factories. They probably groan when she sees it coming because she is just on them. And she's usually at that factory from the beginning of the process right to the end of packaging. Now, there's some things that are beyond her scope where she'll have to have people come in if it's too big of a run, or sometimes we produce multi-components in different factories and we have it assembled somewhere else. But for a lot of part, you can get a lot of mileage out of that person who's doing your sourcing and doing your export and also doing inspection.
Like Shane said too, you know, the piece of paper or the contract or the purchase order is only worth, you know, maybe even not even worth the paper it's printed on. But one of the things that I've found effective is I always have them put their seal. In China, there's an official seal. It's usually red ink. And I always insist that they stamp that and fax that or take a picture of that and send that back to me. But that's not going to totally protect you. But that seal is like a badge of, it's like an honor or a commitment in Chinese culture that means a lot. And so the chances of them screwing you over with that seal on there, I found that goes down. So I always have them stamp it with that seal and send it back to me.
All right, so very quickly, I just want to say I would never pay an FBA prep center. I'm sure I'll create some enemies here, but anything you need to be done there should be done in China. And it's you write down the specs, you write down exactly your expectations, and it can be executed with excellence. The other thing is, you know, I would just say overall, if you set the clearest expectations in your PO and your contract, whatever, you're going to have a higher chance of success. There are POs, by the way, that are absolutely enforceable in China. There's a couple things. It has to be in the native Chinese, you know, so it has to be written out in their language, and the factory name has to be also written in the Chinese characters. If you have that with the right PO and the right arbitration on the back, it's absolutely enforceable, all the way through to contracts. But a PO, Augustus, I'll send you a copy of the PO. You can send it out to everybody. This basic PO is absolutely enforceable in China under their arbitration, as long as you follow those two guidelines. Got to be in Chinese, right? The core outline, and the name has to also be in Chinese.
Thank you, gentlemen. We are coming towards the end of our expert panel speak. I personally took in 5 items that I would like just to summarize. Relationship. It's very important to build personal relationship by going to China. It's important to do inspection each time, even with the factories that you're already working with. A comment made by Steven. Kian made a comment that it's important to get a few quotes and sometimes bounce against each other to get a more competitive rate. Another good comment is sometimes you need to go and eat those worms to get the 30% discount. But if it works, you have to do it. Or you can send somebody who can eat the worms on your behalf. And finally, again, comment from Steven that it's important to set clear terms from start and get that purchase order that is enforceable. So let's give our panel a big round of applause.
Hey guys, so hope you enjoyed that panel in Prague with myself, Steve Simonson, Shane Oglow and Kevin King. It was a lot of fun and I hope you guys took some value from it. And if you're new to the channel, feel free to connect with me in my Facebook group, Sourcing with Kian, that will appear here. It's an awesome online community on Facebook where we all just help each other with sourcing. And also feel free to connect with me on Instagram where I am Kian_JG. And if you're feeling a lot more social, then let's hang out over there. The organizer of this event, Augustus, has got an awesome YouTube channel called Orange Click, which I'll post here. And he's got a lot of great Amazon speakers on his channel, as well as he's got his own website, orangeclick.com, and then also the actual website for this event of the European Seller Conference. Those are all going to appear here, and I'll also link them down in the description below. Don't forget to check out the links in the description below if you want to join our free Facebook group or if you want to connect with me on Instagram. Also, if you want to work with me on a one-to-one basis to help you get better terms, better prices, better suppliers, better quality, anything like that, feel free to book a coaching session and that link will appear here and also down in the description below. So good to see you guys and hopefully connect with you guys all again soon, and I will see you guys in the next video. Take care.